Welcome to Propaganda Loves You, the show that asks and answers the question, what do ISIS and a man in a chicken suit have in common? I'm Kodie, your host for this week, joined by Arthur, Joe, and Cheyenne.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Welcome back to Propaganda Loves You. Our main topics for this week that we're going to be covering is looking at what's going on in Portland, what's going on in Chicago, specifically trying to see, from individuals on the ground, some things that have been recorded versus their rhetoric that's kind of coming out of the Trump administration. And more specifically, there was a roundtable that Trump did, an Antifa roundtable. And so we're gonna talk a bit about that. I've got a article that I'm gonna read, and that's gonna kind of kick off the main conversation. Before we do that, I do have a quick game to play with you guys. So got Joe and Arthur and Chai here today. So to kick off, this game is kind of similar to the one we played last week, but this one's called Two Truths and a Lie. So two of these things are true. One is definitely a lie, and I'm gonna give you guys these. And the goal here is if you can tell me which one's the lie, and for the two truths, if you can figure out who it is that actually said that, if you can figure out who that quote came from, that's extra points for the game that we're not keeping track of points for. So, you guys ready?
I like the Drew Carey touch.
Yeah. All right. So, true truths and a lie. All right. The first quote: "The streets must be cleansed of unpatriotic elements." That's quote number one. Quote number two: "Our enemies are within, and we will root them out." And then quote number three: "Sometimes democracy must be suspended to save it." I'm going to drop all three of these quotes into our chat so you guys can read them and decide. Any guesses here?
My hunch is that number three is the fake.
Okay.
I'm going to go with one as the fake.
Okay.
I'm going to go with one as the fake. Anytime they talk about cleansing.
Yeah. Okay. So we got two saying one's the fake and one saying three. Anyone have any guesses on who might any of these quotes are be from?
Number two's got Stephen Miller written all over it.
Number one's got Mussolini written all over it.
Well, funny you should say that. Number one is actually true, and that came from Mussolini.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow,
I
good
just
job.
wanted to avoid the classic Hitler trope.
Right? Yeah. We went back to the father of fascism, not the, what was it, the facsimile that Hitler was, I guess. Anyway, yeah, so yeah, that was back actually in like the 1920, 25, 26, after a couple of assassination attempts in that time. So that's what he was talking about as far as cleansing or purifying the nation and cleansing the streets of these unpatriotic elements. Quote number two, this is also true. So I gave away that quote number three is the fake one. So you guys guessed that. You're right. But this was from Senator Joseph McCarthy back during the Red Scare era, specifically a 1950s, I think it was Wheeling speech that he did in West Virginia. And, that was the originator for that specific quote, but I'm pretty sure Trump has said the same enemies within comment. So is Stephen Miller. Maybe didn't add the "we will root them out" portion, but who knows? We could probably attribute that there as well. I would have accepted any of those answers, actually. All right. And then the last one, this is we made it up, but feel like someone probably said it at some point, I'm sure, if you dig back
I think
far enough.
Peter Thiel has that exact thought 20 times a day, but maybe he doesn't say it.
That was just part of his Antichrist, talks that he's been giving to people recently. There's just crazy stuff coming out of there. That's got to be a whole episode, I think, for us at some point. But, yeah.
I'm sure somebody's done some reporting already on I don't know, this weird mythology complex in Silicon Valley with some of these huge tech people having a messiah complex about their whole situation. Yeah, there's a lot to root out there.
Yeah, there's a podcast called The Nerd Reich, which I haven't listened to as much as I probably should, but there's a couple really good episodes in there, and he definitely deep dives into Silicon Valley and tech and like what is going on there, and the not Christo-fascism, but the, what do they call that?
Techno-feudalism?
Yeah, there we go. Techno-feudalism. That's the one.
Yeah. Bring back the kings, but with AI.
Yeah, exactly. Can do no wrong, right? Yeah, Elon is working on that. Before we kind of get into our main topic, so anything that you guys wanted to bring up today? Anything that from your end that you just wanted to talk about?
I mean, there's now a ceasefire kind of in Gaza, so it's good, I guess. But it's messy. There's stuff to talk about there. I don't know if we want to talk about that today or not, but I know Drop Site News has been covering that pretty well in their daily roundups.
Yeah, I think like it's actually glad you brought that up because I was thinking about that too. One thing that I think people should watch out for with that, I think we're probably all in agreement on this podcast. Like a ceasefire is a good thing as long as it's actually being like followed and people aren't using that to like as a cover for something else. So like, stopping violence is a good thing. But what I've seen a lot of narrative, like people saying like, oh, now people are against a ceasefire, like trying to make it look like anyone on the left is against the ceasefire because Trump was involved with it. It's like, no, like Zateo, those guys came out and like, hey, we're supportive of the ceasefire. That's a good thing, right? So when you see people say like, probably call bullshit on that right away, or at least make them give you examples of what you're talking about there.
And with the ceasefires in the past, and probably with this one too, it's like the main thing that people who keep up with Palestine care about is like, as soon as a ceasefire gets announced, Israel very quickly ignores it and continues to do random things. And I think they did a few things right after this one was announced, but have kind of stopped now. So I don't know. We'll see if it holds. Depends on, I guess, Netanyahu's respect for Trump, if that'll hold out, or if he'll, I don't know, pull out the Jeffrey Epstein list and try to do some blackmailing in public. I don't know.
The one other thing that I did want to show before we kind of get into the main topics here, speaking of Stephen Miller, did you guys see the clip where he glitched out? Did you guys see that?
I saw a few.
Yeah.
One where he talks about plenary power for the president, and then the other one where he uses I instead of the president when discussing the powers of the executive branch.
Oh, weird. I didn't hear about the second one. I just knew about the first one. I was just Googling plenary authority to make sure I had a vague understanding of what that means. Yeah, the definition, when you just look up the definition of the word plenary, well, one of them means an adjective to describe a meeting, meaning a meeting that is attended by all the participants at a conference or assembly. But the other definition as an adjective is unqualified or absolute. So plenary authority means absolute authority or unqualified authority. And I guess it's on particular issues. So the way Stephen Miller's using it is like, president has absolute unquestionable authority on questions of immigration and sovereignty, which means he can act like a king.
Yep. And I think it was also talking specifically about the military there and how we use the military in that situation. Here was the clip. So what they were talking about here.
You've called the district judge's ruling blocking the deployment of National Guard in Oregon legal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue. We'll try to fix that and get back to you after.
That was the clip, yeah, of him just completely glitching out as soon as he says something he wasn't supposed to or whatnot. That was, yeah, quite telling.
You know that he just got back to like the White House and Trump's like, oh, that's beautiful, Stephen, beautiful. That's such a dumb question. I can't believe you asked. You handled it so well, Stephen. They're all just sycophants of each other. And they're like, oh, yeah, Stephen, you pretended your mic didn't work. It was beautiful, beautiful, Stephen.
And then CNN afterwards, when they uploaded that, they only uploaded the follow-on, like not that actual portion of it when he says that. So it was just when they got back in contact with him. So,
Wait, so the media did something to make the administration not look so bad?
Right?
That's weird. Why would they do that? Why would they help them like
Even
that?
even more, the producer, apparently they let that, there's like some producer of this segment on CNN, and they let him re-record it, and then they edited it for YouTube, and then they put up the answer where he didn't use plenary authority or whatever. It's like CNN should not be viewed by any household. Come on.
Well, that's how it was some more conservative people that I used to work with would always call it like the Communist News Network or whatnot. Like now it's just like that's the same, it's Fox
Conservative
Light.
News Network.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
I mean, it's just the capitalist news network. They do whatever's
Ooh,
good for
that's
big
good.
business. Like
That's good. That's good.
Please stay tuned for a word from our sponsors.
The world is getting faster, louder, and a lot less predictable. From the morning commute to a night out on the town, you have to be ready for anything. That's why Ironclad Tactical is proud to introduce our new Tactical Essentials line.
I used to get so stressed about all the things that could go wrong, the office, the train, even a crowded concert. But now I feel secure. My tactical umbrella gives me peace of mind in the rain, and my hardened sunglasses give me confidence during my commute.
The Tactical Essentials line is designed for your day-to-day life. We use a military-grade composite armor to create a full line of products that are durable, reliable, and most importantly, ballistically protected. Our new umbrellas, sunglasses, backpacks, and even our hairspray are designed for your peace of mind.
Imagine you can go about your day without a worry. The Tactical Essentials line isn't just about protection. It's about empowerment. It's about taking control of your daily routine and knowing you are prepared for any contingency.
I feel so much more secure now. I just bought my wife the new little black tactical dress for our next concert. It's so reassuring to know that we're both protected, no matter what.
Take your confidence back. Take control of your commute and take your safety back into your own hands. Get the Tactical Essentials line from Ironclad Tactical today.
Ironclad Tactical! Everyday protection, uncompromised.
The Everyday Tactical Essentials line is not intended to treat, cure, or prevent mental stress associated with the lack of public safety. Do not test for fun. Keep out of reach of children.
Let's jump into our kind of main topic today. So what we wanted to talk about, what we've been chatting about over the last week was just what is occurring in Portland and what's occurring in Chicago with the ICE deployments and National Guard deployments there and kind of the tactics that you're using. And recently, the administration, like we mentioned, had this Antifa roundtable where it was like influencers plus pretty much all the cabinet members, like all at this big table talking about what they're going to do to Antifa. There was like one influencer there who had stolen a flag from somebody that was trying to burn it in front of the Capitol and got into like an altercation. And like when he literally brought the flag in as a prop, like to show the president, like he was like showing it to him. And then the president said something like, it helped you get famous. And then, do you know the name of the guy you took it from? Let's prosecute him. And like was telling Pam Bondi to like to do this thing. But there was so much crazy shit in that that conversation that like going through that could be an entire episode probably. But I think what we really want to focus on today is some of the specific things that they're saying versus what's being reported on in Portland and Chicago from people just like taking video on the ground, posting to TikTok, like as to like what's actually happening. And so I'll show a clip if you may have seen it. It's from The Daily Show. They actually did a really good clip, better than I could, put together. So we're just going to credit them and show that. But before I show that, I want to read from an article. This is from, was it the New Republic? Admittedly, I don't know a ton about this news site. I don't know if you guys do New Republic or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm aware of it.
Yeah,
It's a somewhat old-ish publication in American news, kind of lefty. But yeah, I don't know much about their website. I think websites in general are riddled with ads these days, but yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty full. But the article itself was, I think, really well written, and it talks about both what they're doing from a propaganda standpoint and how it's also being pushed from a lot of the right-wing influencers, which they're accurately calling propagandists. So I'm just going to read the article. We might cut out parts of it for the actual show, but I want to read through the whole thing because I think it's pretty decent. And this was from October 11th, written by Greg Sargent. The title is MAGA Implodes Over Kristi Noem's Stare Down with Man in Chicken Suit. A good New York Times piece on Portland nevertheless demonstrates how the conventions of objective reporting fail to accurately capture the bad faith driving pro-Trump propaganda. All right. This week, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem staged a bizarre photo op in Portland that appeared designed to bolster President Trump's effort to deploy Oregon's National Guard against ICE protesters in the city. Noem stood on top of a rooftop observing protesters below, and MAGA influencers hailed it as a moment of extraordinary heroism against a powerful, implacable enemy. Noem just stared down violent Antifa rioters on the roof of a Portland ICE facility, one wrote. Alas, it turned out there were only a few protesters milling around far in the distance, including one man in a chicken suit. Intense online mockery ensued, and this buffoonish display is now at the center of a good New York Times piece which details how the White House is relying on MAGA media personalities to spread the deceptive impression of a city in large-scale civil collapse. However, the Times piece commits one misstep. It keeps describing those MAGA personalities as provocateurs. In fact, they are propagandists. Mainstream news outlets appear uncomfortable wrestling with the degree to which pro-Trump media figures practice propaganda undertaken in bad faith toward expressly instrumental ends. We need them to get past that. This may seem like a churlish objection given the Times piece is well reported and informative, but this euphemistic provocateur language risks diminishing the force and quality of the paper's own reporting. The piece notes that federal and state law enforcement have reported that protests that are small-scale and nothing like the civil breakdown depicted by Trump to create a rationale to federalize Oregon's National Guard, that's temporarily blocked in court. That was what we were just seeing Stephen Miller's reaction to. Then it reports this. But in the bifurcated media world of 2025, one side's comparative calm is the other's hellscape. As the White House described Portland on Wednesday, and the narrative that the Trump administration has wanted has been supplied by a coterie of right-wing influencers elevated by Mr. Trump himself. The piece also refers to dueling visions of reality, but this isn't a case of one side genuinely seeing things one way as comparative calm and the other side genuinely seeing them differently as a hellscape. It's a case of one side, law enforcement and journalists, trying to faithfully depict what's happening, and the other side, MAGA, concertedly lying about it to serve corrupt ends that are comprehensively, even intentionally disconnected from facts on the ground. One influencer, for instance, accuses the Portland police chief of allowing violent terrorists to run the city, which is horseshit of the highest order. The Times piece quotes another MAGA personality suggesting that right-wing agitators might be handing out flags and trying to bait protesters into burning them. Other MAGA figures have described the city as a war zone and under siege by Antifa or fallen to Antifa, and even in a state of open insurrection. Indeed, as Media Matters documents, the gap between what MAGA media are portraying and what local press is reporting, the protests are mostly small and peaceful, has grown to enormous proportions. As one reporter put it, many protesters are in pajamas, sharing pastries, throwing a frisbee, and playing board games. The point is not that there are zero examples of leftist protests getting violent. As the Times notes, a handful of leftists are getting prosecuted for just that. Rather, it's none of this remotely matches what Trump and MAGA are conjuring into being. The word provocateur doesn't do justice to any of this, and we don't mean to pick on the Times here, as the euphemism is constantly used elsewhere too. Provocateur implies that all this is akin to plucky showmanship, political theater designed to needle, satirize, provoke, and entertain, as opposed to manipulate and deceive. Some of these personalities probably do see themselves to some degree as putting on a show, but the broader aim of all of this agitprop is far uglier. Trump has employed a form of state propaganda that may be unrivaled by any presidency in modern memory, and these MAGA influencers are generating material for that vile effort. This is partly about producing endless online content to keep the MAGA base well fed. Noem has chroniclers around her capturing her every move. When she gazed down on the man in the chicken suit, several depicted it as a bravely confronting Antifa mobs, even though the man stood with few other people hundreds of feet away. But the absurdity of this episode doesn't diminish how sinister and carefully elaborated much of this propaganda truly is. When ICE raided an apartment complex in Chicago, where Trump is also trying to deploy various National Guards, state propagandists produced a slick video portraying it as a heroic operational triumph against a dangerous, determined, dug-in enemy.
Stephen Miller declared that the complex was filled with Tren de Agua terrorists. Yet, as Aaron, I'm not going to be able to pronounce his name. Let's go Reichlin Melnick. Yeah, Aaron Reichlin Melnick. Let's go. Points out all of 2 people were identified as possible members of the gang per CNN. While some others reportedly had criminal histories, some involving drug possession, surely that doesn't justify a hyper-militarized operation that terrorized scores or hundreds of people. The building had 130 units and dragged children into the streets. If Miller were being honest about his true project, he'd forthrightly admit that he consciously intends all of this as deliberate propaganda. It's geared towards establishing unlimited discretion for Trump and simply invent emergencies with an eye towards vastly expanding presidential power. Miller wants Trump to bulldoze the courts into surrendering on fact-finding, into granting him quasi-absolute authority to declare into existence, merely by fiat, the conditions needed to justify whatever law enforcement or domestic military operation that Trump, i.e. Miller, launches next, including ones targeting Americans. In inflicting these operations on civilian populations, incites violence in return. From Miller's perspective, that's surely all the better. Aswin Suzbank reports Versateo that Trump advisors are nudging him to invoke the Insurrection Act if necessary to circumvent judicial checks on these authorities. That's plainly what Miller hopes for. Yet the conventions of political reporting today are poorly suited to capturing this naked use of sheer pretext and bottomless bad faith they rely upon. Headlines in the Times, for instance, regularly fall short in just this way. They treat Trump and his administration's stated rationales as things they authentically believe, whether it's the claim that Harvard violates student civil rights to justify state crackdowns on academic freedom, or the insistence that Portland is under siege from domestic terrorists to justify deploying the military there. In these cases, casual readers will have zero inkling that they are bad faith pretext as opposed to genuinely held positions. The media needs to find new tools to convey these basic realities. Propagandists are not provocateurs. Trump's stated grounds for his abuses of power are not actual reasons, they are pretexts created for purely instrumental ends. And Kristi Noem did not stare down mobs of Antifa terrorists in Portland. That's because there isn't any serious network of organized leftist violence in the United States, no matter how loudly Miller shrieks otherwise. Grasping how committed MAGA is to such industrial-scale deceptions is critical to getting this broader movement right. So that was from Greg Sargent, New Republic, also the host of the Daily Blast podcast. So I just thought the way that he wrote that up captured basically everything that I wanted to talk about today. So it was a good start to getting into this. But yeah, just from that piece there, I think there's a couple key questions that really come out to me. And it's like, one, there's the criticism of how the media portrays what the administration is doing and how they normalize it, which has been a criticism for a very long time, but also not recognizing what's occurring or not actually naming things for what they really are, right? Like, I think is the big thing that comes out of that. And I guess, like, do you guys agree with that? Do you think there's power in calling out propagandists as we see them, like ourselves included in that? But I think the one thing that they said here, that I'm trying to find the specific quote, but it was talking about a bad faith argument or whatnot. But anyway, let me pause because that was a lot of talking from me. Any thoughts from you guys first?
Yeah, I guess the question that I would kind of want to have us ponder in order to address what you're saying is, like, are there ethical responsibilities that journalists have in the media when they're reporting on the news? And if so, what are those ethical responsibilities? I mean, we can tie this to a different issue that gets at the same problem whenever you're reporting, even if you imagine a local reporter who gets news of police chasing someone and then things happen and that person they were chasing dies after getting shot. How do you report that? Because sometimes they will use very evasive language to avoid implying that the officer is the one that pulled the trigger and shot the person. They'll say, suspect struck by bullet in officer-involved shooting dies. And it's like, did the officer kill that person? I don't know. It's not clear what's going on here. And so they sort of, that might seem like they're just trying to be factual or whatever, but it's deliberately evasive in a way that avoids implying that the officer committed a homicide, right? And the way that, especially these headlines that was the name Greg Sargent, puts in this article. He puts two of these headlines from the Times in the article as like examples. And one of them says, Trump administration finds Harvard violated civil rights law. That's the title of that article in the New York Times. Trump administration finds. What does it mean to find? It kind of means scientifically, that word find, if you're putting it in a scientific peer-reviewed journal, that is a very specific claim that you found evidence of how DNA works, or you found this, or you found that. Like finding something scientifically is a very, strong claim to make. So when the New York Times says that the Trump administration finds that that Harvard violated civil rights law, it sounds like it's absolutely true, right? And that's kind of Mr. Sargent's point about propaganda, is that it's not absolutely true.
Yeah, it should be decides. They decide, whatever. Yeah, there should be definitely an ethical boundary upon all of this reporting, especially from like a president, where it's like the entire point is just to create a social atmosphere of like exhaustion so that we all just, and to make their like events seem inevitable, wherein Stephen Miller sends out the military and then they can kind of backtrace it, and they say because Portland's burned to the ground over and over. It's sad. I think there was like a fairness doctrine in the 80s or something about media that kind of gave rise to this too, where they used to have to present news in like a even-handed, even-keeled way, and that kind of went out the window.
I guess just thinking about how news gets produced, I want to go back to like the dawn of everything idea about modes of production. Like news as content is a productive enterprise. It has to get produced by human beings. There are certain incentives for those human beings to produce it. And so it comes back to the follow the money thing, especially when you're dealing with big media conglomerations where, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, for example. You have to be skeptical, I think, about news that is produced under incentives that favor a certain capitalist. And I think ethically for journalists, my feeling about it, as a non-journalist, I'm not a journalist, my feeling about journalism ethically is that good journalists have an obligation to the general public to inform them fairly about powerful groups, whether it's the government or a corporation or a military, that are doing things that affect them. Right? And so if a powerful group like a government or like a president is deliberately misleading the general public, as a journalist, you have an ethical responsibility to point out that misleading language and to sort of clarify that situation for the listener or the viewer. So yeah, I think that's where the New York Times is failing abjectly on a bunch of issues. People have documented all of the propaganda that the New York Times has sort of laundered for the state of Israel when it comes to Palestine and Gaza. But they do it on a bunch of issues. They're just like CNN, the capitalist news network. They're very much in that line of things. But yeah, that's what I want to get at ethically. It's like when the news avoids pointing out some obvious propaganda or even laundering it and calling it provocateur instead of propaganda. Because people immediately think propaganda is bad. Provocateur, oh, that's just a silly guy trying to stir the pot, trying to rile people up. It's not that serious. Like Mr. Sargent is making a really good point with this article, I think.
Like a firebrand, right? Like, yeah. Yeah. And I think, Joe, you hit on something there that is like, how can you have two like core directives if you're a for-profit news company, right? A publicly traded for-profit news company, or even privately owned by, Jeff Bezos, like Washington Post or whatnot. You've got two competing things. You have the need for attention and to bring in money and, profit your shareholder profit up. And that competes with whatever ethical standards or morals that you might have. Right. So I think that's important, but yeah. And then talking about just like calling out exactly what is actually occurring with plain language versus trying to hide it behind, euphemism or whatnot there. And then the other thing that kind of stuck out to me was he was talking about the state propaganda machine that Trump has been building, and it's basically being fed by the right-wing influencer propagandists, right? So like you have Kristi Noem on the top of the roof, like looking down at this dude in a chicken suit, right? But you've got all these photographers and videographers like catching the right angles, catching what is the clips that we need to get, right? So then that content can then just be repackaged by non-government entities, all of these right-wing propagandists, and then Trump can go and tweet it later, right? Like we just talked about that with the Dilly meme team thing, right? Like they're literally just creating this, and then it's kind of like, oh, we didn't, we're just joking around. We're just pulling in stuff that other people are making. We're not making this ourselves, right? Like almost plausible deniability or something like that.
It's an internet troll in the White House. That's what it is. That's why, I don't know, you can't just think of behavior like that as harmless. I think that's the most dangerous thing about the internet troll personality as a cultural sort of identity a person takes on, is that this assumption that it's harmless in some level, isn't actually doing something harmful with the way they're using language. We could have a lot less patience for just internet troll behavior in general. You can have fun without doing what people like that Dilly guy are doing, that's just grotesque and obscene and reprehensible, in my opinion.
And from his own words, he's not out there to have fun. He's here to destroy liberal democracy and Democrats, right? Like that's what he said. He's got a stated goal. And I would guess that it's a very similar goal to a lot of the other propagandists out there. So
Most investors see chaos and run. At Faith First Banking, however, we see volatility as a valuable market inefficiency. It's time to trade vague promises for physical inventory.
I was tired of soft assets, stocks that rise and fall on emotion. I told my advisor I want something backed by steel and absolute necessity. They put me into the Community Defense Bond, and it's been the most stable asset in my portfolio.
The Community Defense Bond offers unparalleled security. Its returns are guaranteed because the bond is directly backed by the hard military assets that secured the Capitol Restoration Project. That is the physical, ironclad tactical equipment and the improved logistics and supply chains necessary to enforce lasting peace.
Your investment is protected by the authority's immutable need for constant security and control. The demand for order is not going down, and the returns on your bond are tied directly to the value of disciplined governance.
It's smart money. I told my friends I'm investing in the certainty of force. Every quarter, I get my return and I know exactly what it represents: disciplined investment and disciplined governance.
Consider this your invitation to the only investment class that profits directly from order and peace.
Invest in the Community Defense Bond. Faith First Banking. Order pays.
So I guess moving on from that specific article, I wanted to bring in, like I mentioned earlier, this clip from The Daily Show. What this clip is basically taking the words and rhetoric from the Trump administration and their officials, and then comparing that to what is being shown on the ground in Portland and Chicago. So let me share my screen, make sure you guys have audio.
President Trump will end the radical left's reign of terror in Portland once and for all.
You look at Portland and you see fires all over the place. You see fights and, just violence.
This network of Antifa is just as sophisticated as MS-13, as TDA, as ISIS, as Hezbollah, as Hamas, as all of them. They are just as dangerous. They have an agenda to destroy us, just like the other terrorists we've dealt with for many, many years.
When ICE officers have to street battle against Antifa, hand-to-hand combat every night to come and go from their building.
Slide to the left. Slide to the right. You look at what's happened with Portland over the years. It's a burning hellhole.
So I just thought that was a great juxtaposition there between what Trump administration is saying and then what people are filming in front of these ICE facilities. And granted, this has definitely got a lens to it, right? There have been acts of vandalism. There have been acts of violence by some of the protesters, but the way it's being presented is completely out of touch with reality. And this is much more in line with what's occurring every single day, I think, for these locations. So yeah, I wanted to get thoughts, and Arthur, I don't know, or you, Cheyenne, have any thoughts from the Oregon side of things here.
I think this whole movement should like destroy the Republican Party. Like, what are they doing? This is like years later. How can you justify this entire like false witch hunt against some ideological left and send troops into left cities? This is like absolute absurdity. And that Daily Show clip is really funny. It's very like true into like what's actually happening in Portland. People are like dressing up in costumes and dancing, and there's like that chicken suit guy. That whole Christy Nome video where she goes on the roof is like it pans to the left, and there's like 20 people who are being controlled by like a handful of cops. Like, it's all under control, and it's just completely ridiculous that the administration uses this. If this were like Obama doing this crap, or it's like Obama sends troops into Alabama and Texas to control like the radical right, which is, it would just be, and then like in the same breath, like announces like Qatari Air Force training, what, like in Idaho, come on.
I even like outside of being from Oregon, like we're talking about the right being internet trolls, and then you're watching these videos in Portland, and like people who are showing up are just, regular people, old people, some nerds who like to play board games and stuff. It's like social and culture, and there's a conflict happening, but the only people being like, it's a war, Hezbollah, military it's just such a farce. And it's not the Antifa people saying that. Like, it's just not, it's just make believe. It's hard to even know what to say about it, honestly.
I think you hit on like a really interesting thing there, though, that I've been thinking about for a while. It's like they're turning protest into community engagement and community building, right? Like, as a way to like bring people together. And they're almost doing like the in-person version of trolling, kind of like counter trolling, like just demonstrating how dumb this is by like, hey, we're just going to dress up and blow up costumes and show up. Like, and what? Like, and dance around. Like, we're clearly not here to start any violence in these like raccoon outfits, right? Like, you're not running away in that thing. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really, I feel like it should be very effective. The question is like, does that message get out? Does what message kind of overrides, or does it like get out to the mainstream of what's actually happening in a lot of these more community building protests?
Yeah, that's the other danger of corporations and conglomeration and stuff, of like Oracle purchasing TikTok and trying to control the algorithm and stuff. It's just, the silver lining of the internet is that it allows us to see what actual everyday people are posting and going through. Like, you can look up what's going on in Portland based on what average people in Portland are showing and posting about. You don't have to rely on major news outlets or government sources to know what's going on. Average people can post about it. And the whole like historical project that Howard Zinn does is like try to go back in history and point out those examples of what average people were going through and use that as a basis for what it was like at that time. And so in the present moment, we have the ability to post and share with each other in real time what's going on. And that allows us to see through this propaganda. That allows us to recognize when it's, a government tries to prop up this stupid, silly narrative about Antifa as, first of all, an actual organization that does things in an organized way, which isn't true, or that they're terrorists in some way. Everybody recognizes it's silly, but yeah, that's, I guess, the danger I wanted to point out about them trying to control the media, and specifically social media now. They've had control over mass media for a long time, like we see with CNN and the editing we were talking about earlier. But so far, it's been pretty hard for them to control social media. Even a platform like Instagram that's American and owned by American corporations and everything, I can go on there every day and see a ton of stuff on the ground going on in Palestine, because despite their ability to own the media in that sense, they can't necessarily control everything that everybody posts. So yeah, I don't know, turn it into like a defensive posting, I guess. Just on that topic of what we were just talking about, you had mentioned something before about vandalism and violence, and it just made me think about the different opportunities that fascists use to create justifications for scaling up their violence or scaling up their control. So any little example that they can point to of leftist protesters being violent in some way they use as a justification to ramp things up. But it just posed a question in my head, because a lot of the leftist protesting and even some of the leftist vandalism is done in an effort to stop violence against human beings in some way, or even in a climate action sense, violence against the planet. When you think about like at the book/movie, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, something like that. Is vandalism violence? Is there a meaningful difference between what we mean when we say violence and what we mean when we say vandalism? And is it good to allow powerful groups to equate those two things?
Joe, to your point, what it made me think about was like the quote from, I think it was DHS or something, about like 1,000% increase in attacks on ICE, right? Since January 20th. And I'm just like, well, like, what constitutes an attack on ICE? Is it when they ram a civilian vehicle and then shoot a woman 5 times? Like, was that an attack on ICE? And then also, no shit, there's going to be an increase when you send thousands and thousands of ICE people to just detain everybody, right? Anytime you have interactions with a population, there's going to be some form of conflict when you have that many people going out into the suburban areas and literally rappelling from Black Hawk helicopters to the top of an apartment complex and going down an apartment complex, apartment by apartment. Of course, you're going to have these conflicts. So I guess that's what made me think about like the bullshit there, or the use of that statistic super disingenuously, like 1,000% increase when you caused that increase, you know?
Yeah, totally. And I just think categorically, I always get frustrated when the term violence is used to describe vandalism, not because there isn't a meaningful overlap, like if you're thinking in a Venn diagram kind of way, like there would be some overlap, but there is a big meaningful separation between what I think of as violence, which I typically think of as against living things, right? You can't do violence to a rock in the same way that you can do it to an animal or a person or even a plant. The destruction of property being conflated with the destruction of life. I think that is typically the way that the propaganda works, and I just kind of want to separate those out. Is there a place for using the destruction of property to mitigate, reduce, or eliminate the destruction of life? Like, is that a justifiable tactic? You know, you're not killing people, but you're disabling or destroying property in order to disable or destroy the means by which an empire kills people.
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally see the difference between those two things, and the tactic there of trying to equate property to having the same value as life or freedom of a person, right? Like, it's ridiculous when you think about it, but that's classic, like constantly used to justify crackdowns, right? Like, oh, people busted windows, so we're going to go in and we're going to arrest an entire neighborhood or something like that. I get where you're coming from on that one.
Last summer, I remember, if you guys remember, like when all the Tesla lots started getting like Molotov or whatever, and like the sudden response of like every cop in every town guarding every Tesla dealership.
And they said it was like, if you were attacking Tesla, you're a terrorist, right? Like that was it at that point too. They said the same thing.
Yeah.
So I guess my thought there is like, man, maybe there's a situation where that's justifiable. Like clearly there could be situations where it's justifiable. If you've got like a super totalitarian regime that's literally just killing people, like, and you're going to destroy the railway so that they can't bring in troops or something, like, you know, you could come up with a ton of hypotheticals where like, yeah, that's an easily justifiable, you know, situation. But I guess in the US, like, is it a good tactic right now when we know as soon as people start doing that, like, it's going to be used as justification to commit state violence, right? Like, I think the tactic of dressing up in goofy outfits and making them look stupid is probably a much better tactic in this scenario.
Some of the things like you're talking about, the guy in the helicopter and stuff, it like just brings me back to this idea I'm talking about earlier where like it is trolls and they're like cosplaying something that's not happening. They're trying to make it happen. And then like when I'm thinking about my response to it, kind of like what you just said, like it does feel naturally to undercut it and be like, why are we taking this seriously? This shouldn't be serious. It doesn't make sense. It's not, you know, like, and it's hard because sometimes that's like not doing something and that feels like not correct either. So seeing people show up in a lighthearted way and like really ground into their community and stuff, like I do think that's a pretty good tactic. Like, this is ridiculous and here we are. This was, you know, representing our values. This is what it actually looks like, you know, is something.
Yeah, and there's like, in terms of just resistance strategies, there's a whole like smorgasbord of things that need to happen for a revolution to be successful. Community building and the mutual aid are like a central part of that. And I just saw a video yesterday of someone from General Strike US giving a presentation about what the point of the general strike is and how to prepare for it. And a big part of what they were talking about was how a lot of times, like in a specific union situation, if a union is preparing to do a major strike, they'll build up a strike fund first so that when they're on strike and when their pay stubs stop, they have a backup fund that they can use to support their members who are striking. Right? So you're able to still get your food and pay your mortgage or your rent or whatever. And so that kind of mutual aid is part of it. It's not that vandalizing the means that the empire uses to oppress people will make all of it stop. It's just a small part of the whole puzzle. It's also the silliness. It's also making fun of how ridiculous their narratives are. It's also building community and teaching each other how to support one another. I think that's what makes it so hard, is because all of those things have to happen kind of simultaneously or get built up in a mutually collaborative way that makes it successful. But yeah, to also your point you raised earlier, Kodie, and what I've been saying, like anytime one of those acts of vandalism takes place, just like with the Tesla stuff, like you mentioned, Arthur, they immediately use it as a means, as a justification for ramping up their actual violence against people. So yeah, it's a tricky situation, but just philosophically, ethically, I just think it's important to separate out vandalism from actual violence that's harmful to life.
Please stay tuned for a word from our sponsors. The Capitol Restoration Project is complete, and now it's time to maintain the security. You invested in the solution, now live the standard. Ironclad Tactical introduces the Safe Citizen Kit.
I bought the bond, and now I feel the change. But I needed more than just a feeling. That's where the Safe Citizen Kit delivers. Every month, I get new gear, new training modules, and new upgrades delivered right to my door.
The Safe Citizen Kit is your commitment to perpetual readiness. This subscription ensures you always have the latest ironclad tactical advancements, from updated ballistic composites to new generation predictive surveillance devices. We provide the tools, you provide the vigilance.
And this isn't just a monthly purchase, it's a monthly upgrade to your citizen status. We ensure that you are one step ahead of social friction and fully committed to keeping the peace. And you get exclusive access to our community threat assessment matrix.
My old gear is no match for what's out there. I feel great knowing I'm always on the cutting edge defense. And it's not just for my peace of mind, it's for my family, and it's my duty as a patriot.
Join an elite tier of preparedness. Subscribe to the Safe Citizen Kit today.
Ironclad Tactical. Perpetual readiness, perpetual freedom.
Ironclad Tactical requires a 2-year minimum commitment to the Perpetual Readiness Standard, and failure to complete monthly training modules may result in temporary asset deactivation.
Joe, you said like those are all things that people can do, or I guess tools in the toolbox there. And then the one that other people are using is documenting what ICE is doing, right? Like, so I don't know if you guys have seen this video. This is from suburbs of Chicago, right? So this is ICE like pulling up on this one car. And you see this guy. I'm wondering if you'll recognize this tactic, Joe. So this is like a 15-year-old girl that they're pulling out of this this car that they just chased down. This guy comes over and then he does the Marine Corps like takedown of this girl that he just ripped out of the car for who knows what reason. But this person is just sitting in their house like filming this as it's occurring and is able to upload it. And there's a ton of videos of ICE violence that you can go and see. Just go like, go on Reddit. I think like there's like Eyes on ICE or ICE Raids or like a couple different subreddits that have a bunch of videos of, ICE taking people in streets. There was the other video of the woman who I think the claim was that she was like tracking or chasing ICE vehicles across the city in Chicago. And there's a video of ICE basically ramming her car, one of the officers coming out and saying like, do something. And then they shoot her 5 times. She lived, but like that's on video. So continuing to document these actions, I think is obviously a critical thing that people need to keep doing. So
yeah, and save the video to your phone, to your device too, if you're like recording an incident. Don't just trust that the social media database will keep it uploaded. People get their videos deleted by platforms all the time, especially in situations like this. So if you're documenting something important that you don't want to lose track of, save it to your device.
I might be misremembering, or maybe this was during the Black Lives Matter protest, but wasn't there like an app that was created where basically you could film what's going on and it would upload to like a secure place like automatically? I should look into that and see if that's still a thing.
No, it might have been an ACLU thing. I do vaguely remember that too.
Because they are going after people that are filming as well. So
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Since several weeks ago, you read the Constitution on the podcast. And this is important, especially for any business owners listening. If you have a place of business in one of these cities that can be used as a staging ground by the feds, what's the Third Amendment? What's the point of the Third Amendment?
I've got it right here. One sec. Not Articles of Confederation. Not Bill of Rights. Amendment 2. Amendment 3. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So, I guess you can refuse service to all the feds, right? Like that are there, and you don't have to allow them into your place of business. Right? Is kind of where you're going with that, Joe. I think the last thing that I wanted to mention about this, when we were watching that video, Christy Nome does the comparison of like Antifa to other terrorist organizations. Says like, oh, it's like Hezbollah, it's like ICE, it's like, or no, not ICE, but
It is, yeah.
It's a terrorist organization.
I just love that
no,
ICE
or
is immediately
ISIS.
thought
And-
of as a terrorist organization now. That's great. Yeah, because they are.
Yeah, pops into the head. But I mean, like, just as a further way to demonstrate how absolutely ridiculous those claims are, like saying that Antifa is equivalent to ISIS in terms of sophistication in their intents, just go look at the Wikipedia for ISIS. Like, I don't even, like, I was trying to do a quick count up, and like 2013, they have over, I think, just looking at the numbers, over 1,000 people that their attacks had killed as of in 2013 alone, with probably double that injured, right? They also had like a specific goal in mind to create an Islamic caliphate and took over a third or more of Syria and Iraq to do so, enslaved all the local populations there, and murdered anyone that didn't agree with them, including creating some of the most graphic propaganda beheading videos you've seen since like the early Al-Qaeda days. So like that comparison, like that should be a no-brainer. Like the moment they make comparisons like that to Antifa, like, I'm sorry, I don't remember the last Antifa execution video I saw. It slipped past me somehow. But yeah, that doesn't even take critical thinking, I don't think. It just takes a basic, I don't know what to call it, but the comparison is so outlandish to me that it's just like anything else they say, not just because of that, because they lie constantly. But if that's one thing that you're looking at, especially anyone that's in the military, that had been in the military and served during that time and somehow supported like the global war on terror, like, you know what that was compared to what they're saying is going on in the United States. That should be a wake-up call, I would think, to anyone that is in the military and still supporting that.
But clearly effective in some ways. So that's like the most terrifying part. Like people are associating just like regular qualities that people would have to like this crazy extreme ideology one way or the other. And it could just be like literally something you're interested in. So yeah, it's like a really dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, I thought it was like highly offensive to like the military and to equate like this ideological movement to things that people were deployed over and enlisted over and actually got into wars over. It's offensive.
I agree. It's a specific tactic, like false equivalence, like trying to take that fear, trying to make people think about the attack in Paris or whatever other attacks that, ISIS did, and make them think that that's Antifa, right? Like trying to connect those two dots. And so like, it's just, yeah, I guess I call out the tactic for sure. Like they're trying to create that false equivalency, and also just the ridiculousness of it compared to what those organizations have actually done versus an ideology.
Yeah. Pointing out organizationally that some things are organizations and some things are just ideas. Like an anti-fascism is just that. It's just an idea that is against, it's like no fascism, bad fascism. spoof. That's what it means. It doesn't mean a group. They don't have the goal of, there's not like a group you can point to with like even with like the Communist Manifesto or something. It's not like there's a specifically organized purpose of that ideological thought. The whole purpose of that ideology is to stop fascism. And so like, you're just, I don't know, the fascists are just telling on themselves every time they do this. Like, oh, well, we want to keep doing fascism, and these people are, booing us and dressing up in silly costumes and making fun of us for it. Yeah, because it's a bad idea. You should stop.
Joe, to counter your clearly woke liberal mind ideology, Jack Prosobic, I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, but during that round table on Antifa, he's like a very far right, like white nationalist, but he's now in the White House, like doing these round tables and whatnot. And what did he say? He said Antifa has been around in various iterations going back to the Weimar Republic. So if we take a second and we think about who were the anti-fascists in the Weimar Republic and who were the fascists they were fighting against? So like the Nazis. So that alignment there seems interesting to me, that they would want to make that connection. But yeah, who knows? Like you said, telling on themselves.
I just want to comment on the fact that you called me a liberal, which is funny, because if you guys used Rate My Professor when you were in college, or if you still use it, I have a handful of reviews on it, and one of the funniest ones that I have, I love it, because there are just two things that this person, I think, gets wrong. I took a screenshot of it a few weeks ago because it just cracked me out. But one of them was them calling me a liberal, which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah, this is the whole review. They say, an amazing prof. He cares about all of us so much. Love his focus on mental health. Incredibly smart, makes you really think about what you're learning. He's very liberal, though, and does not take too kindly to pro-Israel opinions. But as long as you don't bring that up, you'll be okay. And I just thought that was so funny. First of all, because I don't ever really mention Israel specifically. I talk about genocide in general and history in general, and I ask them to make connections to the present moment, to what's going on in the world. And they draw their own conclusions from that. So they've found out that I don't take kindly to pro-Israel opinions, by inference, I guess. But not a liberal. I would characterize myself as a leftist, as an anarchist, as a communist, perhaps, but not a liberal. I just think that's funny. So
yeah, I don't think I would have known the difference too long ago. Thanks for educating me over the last 6 months on that.
Just, I saw that priest video of Chicago, where they sniped him from the rooftop with the rubber bullets right in the eye or whatever. And these other, the Chrissy Noem one, same thing, chicken guy, both videos, everybody that they're calling like this vandalism and protest stuff, like they're behind giant, tall metal fences. The people are in like brick buildings on top of rooftops. There's police everywhere. No one's trying to like push down the fence. So I think the whole narrative is just ridiculous. And what y'all were saying today, it's like ICE is literally, they've been responsible for over I think this year alone, 20 deaths or something that are reported in these modern day concentration camps. And I think what y'all have been saying is totally relevant. If you flipped the narrative of trying to free people from a work camp in Germany in the 40s, and you had this, of course the Fuhrer would call it vandalism and come up with this whole spiel, but maybe trying to release other people from facilities where they're dying and are specifically targeting, migrants and minority groups is maybe justifiable. So yeah, I don't know. Just surmising that I really liked the opinions and hearing it all.
Purely as a thought exercise, we're not advocating for anyone to go and raid your local ICE facility, but maybe put on a dinosaur costume or something like that.
Nothing illegal about pulling your phone out and recording government activity if you see it. That is perfectly within your legal right. I don't know what the foot is. You have to stand 15 or 20 feet away or something, but you're allowed to record any law enforcement activity you see and post it. That's not against the law.
You guys have any plugs for today?
I think Monday, is it tomorrow? Well, I guess yesterday, as far as the podcast post is concerned, Indigenous Peoples Day, formerly known as Columbus Day. So, yay, Turtle Island. What'd you say?
Said Columbus.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, I think before we go today, the only things I wanted to plug, on the 18th, as we've mentioned the last couple episodes, there's the No Kings protest that's occurring. So you can go on to like mobilize.us or the No Kings site. Key there is go to the nokings.org, the one that we post. Don't go to the nokings.com. I don't even know if that's like a legit site or if they're just trying to scam people by selling t-shirts, but the nokings.org is the one that has the information and like actually has the ways to get in contact with groups that are putting on the protests and where you can go. Also, for the local Adirondack Voters for Change, I believe they've got, if you sign up for their newsletter, they also have all of their events in there to include organizing groups to go to certain protests, if that's in Plattsburgh or Watertown. So that's a good resource if you're looking for more ways to get involved. They're also looking for volunteers right now to do door knocking campaigns for local assembly races to get the word out. So if you want to get involved locally, that's a great group to do that with. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening and hanging out with us.
If you enjoy the show, help us spread the word. Leave a rating or review and share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think would get something out of these conversations.
Your ratings, reviews, and shares help this show grow, and the more people listening, the harder it is for propaganda to win.
So until next time,
stay aware, stay safe, and remember,
propaganda loves you.